the horizon.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the comment section. Hey Esther.
I really
Hey
love
everyone.
that intro. That was great. That was just what I needed to relax.
It's great, isn't it?
Sea, sun.
Love it. Love the music. Love the beat.
Yeah.
So hey everyone, welcome to the comment section. Thank you for spending time with us again. This is the show where I take some interesting comments from my posts on LinkedIn and invite interesting people to delve a little bit more and get into the meat and the bones of what we're talking about here. So I don't know about you, but it's been a big week. There's a lot that's been going on in the news, and I feel like we've all been so busy, especially as parents, as carers, as employees, as business owners. There's a lot going on in our personal lives, but also a lot going on in the world. So I've been feeling it this week. I'm pretty tired right now, and I hope that you are coming with love and openness and ready to spend some time with us and just bring your authentic self as well. This is the comment section. It's the realness, and we're here to have a good conversation. So please let us know in the comments who you are, your name, and where you are dialing in from. I know we get people from all around the world, so let us know where you are calling in from. Put it in the comment section. So today and this week, our area of focus is around men's mental health, and specifically how we can encourage employers to help men to seek help. How can we remove some of the barriers that exist? How can we help to tackle some of those really high suicide rates? How can we design our services and our interventions and our projects in a way that men actually want to engage with, and they're going to get and seek the help, the support that they really, really need? So I have an expert in this area coming to join me to talk about her work and what she does. So Dr. Esther Cole. I'm not going to try to introduce you because I will not do you justice.
No,
I won't. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. What do you do? What's your area of work, your expertise, your experience, and yeah, why are you here to share with us for the next 45 minutes?
So yeah, I'm Dr. Esther Cole. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm an NHS trained psychologist. I'm also the founder and clinical director of Lifespan Psychology, the diverse practice. It's a team of 15 to 20 psychologists. We've always got new people joining, which is great. Psychologists and psychotherapists, and we work with all ages and people from all around the world, all backgrounds, and offer therapy in different languages and so on. And I've always had a passion for men's mental health. It's always been a top priority for me. I obviously, I'm a wife, I'm a mother of a son. I have a dad, I have a brother, I have uncles, and we're no stranger to mental health issues, and everyone is affected. It affects us all. And I suppose when I was invited to do this show, I thought, I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm not an occupational psychologist. They're very different. So occupational psychologists are more trained to look at kind of health in the workplace and organizational issues and health and how it affects you at work. I'm actually trained to work with severe and complex mental health. So, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, severe anxiety, and so on. But recently, since starting my own practice, I've really valued being able to think more about prevention. Prevention is always better than cure. So great that I might be able to work with someone who's been struggling with their mental health for decades and maybe see a really good result. But I'm actually more concerned that we work with people very early on. And this is where I think employers come in, because you're going to see people really functioning at their optimum most of the time at work because they've got into work. And what I think we need to do is prevent barriers by some of it might sound radical, some of my suggestions, some of it might sound really obvious, but removing the need for men to ask in the first place. You know, spotting what those signs are. If somebody has had a bereavement or is going through a major life transition, becoming a new parent, even getting a promotion at work, these are all life events that we should just be in tune with our employees. We should just be in tune with what they might need so they don't have to ask. And I think that's probably where I'll be coming at it today. But I don't want to talk too much.
Interesting, very interesting. And I think what you were saying there in regards to for employers, you know, you will in general you will see people functioning there at work, and there's a great advert that you may have seen and people listening in may have seen on LinkedIn yesterday from Norwich City Football Club, and it's a incredible video. Do check it out on their Instagram page, and it shows two fans and they're next to each other, and it shows them during different games. So throughout a season they're celebrating together, or they're upset when their team concedes a goal. But one of the guys is generally quite unemotional. He's quite stoic. He's not very expressive. He doesn't really get up to applaud the goals. He kind of sits down quite a lot. And there's the other guy who is very expressive and starting conversations with everybody and celebrating when Norwich score a goal, and he's clapping, and he just looks full of life and full of energy.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, it flashes up and says, we don't know who needs support around us. And they go to the final game of the season, and the guy who was actually the most expressive one and the one that was seemingly happy wasn't there. And the other guy puts his scarf down as to say, we've lost this person. And I think that's just it's had hundreds of thousands of shares. I think it's really interesting because what it shows is that you can get two people, one who we would assume is the person who is struggling because they are outwardly, looking a bit withdrawn and just looking a bit subdued, and someone else who is very, very expressive. We would assume that they are okay. And actually out of the two, it was the one that no one would think is the one that ended up taking their own life. So incredible. And thank you to everyone in the comments. We've got Daniel. Hi, Daniel is a founder of ART Mind, which is a men's health social enterprise. And he's shared the link actually in the comments, so check that out. We've got Penny from East Anglia, Abby from Bath, Anima from Nottingham, Millie from, where are you from, Millie? Oh, I think you just copied names in there into the chat, maybe to get your colleagues to come and join in. But thank you, everybody. Please do put your questions and comments in the chat as we go forward. So we know that suicide is the biggest killer of men under the age of 45. In the construction industry, there are around 2 suicides per day. When it comes to self-referrals to NHS talking therapies, around one in 3 are men. So this is a big problem. Esther, how do you think we can go about, at the beginning, how do we reduce stigma around men reaching out and help seeking?
I think this happens in so many different layers and contexts in society, how we need to, even from when our sons are small, the way we talk about our feelings, the way we talk about emotions, the way we socialize men and boys in society, not to feel ashamed and stigmatized. I think that's really important to that from a very young age. But obviously we are all conditioned, and we do have there's gender stereotypes, traditional gender roles, beliefs about what men and men shouldn't talk about. And if that is ingrained, then there's going to be obviously more of an issue about help seeking. And so this is why it's really important. What you've done founding Music Football Fatherhood is a brilliant example of how we need to get the access to mental health support needs to be embedded in the community in ways that are accessible, but also not stigmatizing. So whether it's groups or activities or sports or exercise or even workshops, we're thinking about the actual workplace itself. Men may not want to come to therapy, but they may be accessible to a course on time management, a course on, resilience, stress management, maybe things like stress management, come to think of it, not the best word, but what we know about psychotherapy and psychology and therapy is that the wording is very female orientated. So what we need to look for is much more goal orientated and pragmatic kind of more masculine language when we talk about help seeking. In fact, it's not help seeking. It shouldn't be framed as help seeking. It might be framed as performance enhancement, or kind of goal setting, or coaching, or socials, whatever it might be, but just not using the traditional very feminine language. And even the way we talk about trauma and stress, men are less likely to kind of want to use those words to describe themselves, like those as having emotional difficulties. So probably wording like endurance, or achievement, or resilience, really changing the way we frame it, and then putting it more in preventative kind of mode. So it's not, you have a mental health problem, you need help. It's, we've all been through a lot. We need to access this because it's going to enable us to, go to work, function at home, function at work, achieve our goals. So I hope that makes sense. It's a big question. But I think it's more about the way that society has not only conditioned men, but also that therapy itself is very female orientated. And I think that it's a real mismatch.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think in what we've done in Music Football Fatherhood in designing our services is we've tried to get that real balance of, we're not going to lead, like when we do our extra time events in football stadiums, we don't lead with, this is a men's mental health event. It's extra time. It's a day for fathers. You're going to get a stadium tour, might get some lunch if they have budget. Yeah. We were at Crystal Palace a few weeks ago. They fed us, which is great. Thank you, Sue, if you're listening from Crystal Palace. So yeah, we frame it as that, but we also do want to let people know there's going to be conversation, so we do also want to let people know they're not just coming along for a jolly and a good time. Like, they're going to have a good time, but there's going to be a very serious element to it. We're going to have some very, very open conversations. We're going to be very vulnerable. There's going to be sharing of stories, and there will be people talking about mental health. There will be people talking about the challenges they're facing as men and dads. And I think what you're saying there around the language is very key. I think if we led with, come and have a mental health conversation in football, I don't think many men would come along. But at the same time, we want to also make sure that is present in the communication, so people are coming and knowing what they're expecting. What do you think about that in terms of how do we balance that language of the kind of performance and outcome, but also letting people know what to expect when they get there as well? How do we find that balance?
Yeah, how do we find the balance? Well, I think you've done a really good job there of, I think really it's normalizing, isn't it? It's explained that we all go through life stresses. We all have transitions, things that we find tough, and we're all in this together. And I think what you've done really well is have these kind of like mentors or people that can come with their own lived experience and impart that knowledge and that experience, and explain how they went, how they got through it. So I think it's really hard for an individual man to talk to an individual, normally female therapist, but as a group with someone leading and able to be as open as you've been about your lived experience of PTSD, that's phenomenal. That's what changes lives. It's seeing yourself in the other person and seeing how they got through those barriers and those challenges. And I think that will always be motivational, and people always want to turn up to that because it's not, the finger's not pointing at them, but yet it resonates with them.
100%. I think the role modeling element is so key, especially with men, especially at work. Having like more senior men go first, if you like, and say, oh, this is the challenge I'm facing, or this is what's been going on with my own mental health. I've seen firsthand when I'm doing work with organizations, the power of that. And when I'm doing my sessions in workshops, I always ask the lead who's organizing it in that organization to bring along a senior man if you can, and someone, not just a senior man, but someone who's open and has a story to tell and is willing to be vulnerable. And when they do that, literally you can see the change in the shift in the room. I remember there was it wasn't necessarily about mental health, but an example of someone kind of sharing quite widely. So I was doing a panel event, and there was a guy who had two older children, more mature children in their 30s, and he was talking about the fact that when they are struggling, when his kids are struggling, they call the mother. When the kids have some good news, they call the mum. And they were still happily married, but he was saying that when his children were younger, the first kind of 12, 13 years of their life, he just wasn't around. He was kind of working a
So
lot.
hard. I can
And
imagine.
yeah, and you know, our hope is that as parents, our kids will grow up and kind of come back to us later on when they've gone into the big wide world, and his kids just didn't come back to him. And it was very, very sad, but it was so powerful that he shared that. And after he did that, you could see the shift in the room, and so many other like men were willing to come up and say, oh, this is what I've been dealing with, you know. And it was that kind of role modeling that really helped to reduce the stigma. Let's explore what you're saying there around childhood and how we talk to boys about emotions. What do you think, you know, having a son yourself, how can we get better at talking to young boys around, you know, emotions, feelings, talking? What's your thoughts around that conversation?
I think just as people, but as little people, we should never tell them, if we can at all, what they should be feeling. It's more to explore with them. You know, why did you feel like that? How did it feel? What happened? Talk me through your thoughts. If they're old enough to do that, you really want to walk through them. You know, why did you feel angry? What happened? Because you're actually then learning about kind of their journey, their mentalization, how they're building relationships, rather than saying, oh, you shouldn't cry. You know, boys don't cry, or you shouldn't react like that, or just hold in your feelings. I think there's a lot more awareness at schools now, and there's a lot more support, and there's a lot more kind of things like mindfulness meditation being taught at a young age. I think is really, really helpful skill that young people should have. But I think, yeah, just the stigma around not showing feeling, not having feeling. I think what's really important, I'm a co-editor of a book on childhood brain injury.
Okay.
And what's so important is we understand how we're biologically hardwired and how, you know, we shouldn't be ashamed of what our brains and our bodies do, because this is what, there's an innate need that we're expressing, or there's a function of that emotional, that behavior. And that's what we as parents, as teachers, as society need to understand. That there's reasons. And I find that a lot of my experience working with men and dads, that when we can provide workshops that actually look at how the brain and the body actually work, it can be really destigmatizing, because you realize that there's like an innate reason, like there's an attachment response, and that can lead us to feeling tearful if we, you know, lose an attachment figure or have a loss. Like, it's okay that we cry, you know, that men cry, that is a biological mechanism. And I know it might sound a bit obvious, but I feel like talking about the brain and biology and the body, it almost like gives us permission to explore those emotions in a way that is more palatable for sort of men and boys.
I think that's super interesting, isn't it? I think it's appealing to people. You know, I find when you are giving information to someone, you'll notice that some people respond to the heart element, you know, and the feelings element and the storytelling, if you like. Some people want to understand the logic behind it. What does that mean? How do we get to that conclusion? And I think in speaking to men about mental health, I think what you're saying there, to talk about the biology and the logical, this is what happens and this is the natural response, I think is so powerful in adapting our initiatives and our interventions. So Gemma has mentioned in the chat, she said the high suicide rate in men is from gender stereotypes, the idea that men have to be tough and that emotions are females and therefore lesser than, don't cry like a girl. This is why the harm of gender stereotypes is in the PSHE curriculum. We have another LinkedIn user, I can't see your name, says, do you think it is an effective idea to include feelings and emotions in school during classes on puberty? alongside challenging these gender phrasings like stop being a girl and being a man. So I'll give you some time to think about that, Esther, that last question there around that. But I just want to reflect on what Gemma's saying there. I think, yes, I think I agree what you're saying there. I think there is so much gender stereotyping, and it starts at such a young age.
Yeah.
And we tell boys to behave in a certain way, in general. Not all parents, not all adults do this, but in general, in society, we do tell boys to behave in a certain way, and we kind of give them a blueprint for what a boy is and what a man is. And that doesn't include, telling your parents when you're upset or being allowed to cry. That's not in the box. And so sometimes I do think it's interesting that we, get surprised when those boys become adults and become grown men and fathers and aren't able to express themselves. I remember doing a session a while ago and asking the question to the audience, why don't men seek help for their mental health earlier and often? And one guy came on the screen and said, like, I would love to, but I'm around 40 years old, I think he said. I've never had any practice and I don't know where to start. And you kind of think, we have people who are living for decades on this planet who have never had any practice and any guidance on how to do it. Even if they want to, they don't know how to. So it's a thing that you have to kind of learn of how do I be expressive? How do I allow myself to feel these emotions, let alone then tell anyone else about them. So let's go on to that question then. So what do you think in regards to, is it an effective idea to include feelings and emotions in school during classes on puberty? I know it's a very specific question, but what do you think on that?
I think it's a really good idea. And I think that building what you've just been speaking about, Elliot, I think a way in for someone who's never spoken about their feelings or not very much until, their whole life, we need to think about ourselves as functioning or existing in relationships. So even if you can't talk to someone, a therapist, coach, whoever it might be, about yourself, we all function in relationships. We exist, whether it's our manager, our child, our partner. And what I think is amazing about therapy is that often I'm just working with one person, but through talking about that relationship they might have with their child or their partner, and I may never meet the partner or the child, like something transformative can happen. Because we're learning to understand what other people are thinking and how we're relating to other people. And so someone who's not necessarily very aware of what they might be feeling, they might have comments or concerns or thoughts from their relatives or friends saying, I really think you should speak to someone. I've noticed you've been, I don't know, drinking more than usual, or you've not been meeting up with us, or whatever it might be. I've noticed there's been a change in you. Maybe you need to speak to someone. That person might not intuitively say, I'm going to open up about my feelings, all the things that have happened to me over the last 40 years. But they may be willing to talk about, it's been really tough at work, and this is what my manager's been saying, and I'm worried about my job, or my relationship with my girlfriend, and I really think relationships are the way. And I think going back to the point about puberty, that's when in adolescence it all becomes really important, doesn't it? How we relate to each other and the world, like what kind of values and thoughts and what person we want to be in the world. And so I think through the lens of relationships, I think that's also a way that you can encourage more men to come to whatever is acceptable for it to be called, therapy, coaching, someone from their faith, like a faith leader, whoever it might be. But that lens of relationships is so important.
So I want to shout out an email. So she's saying, thinking of Niobe's ways, work on this too, which inspired the film Close. I haven't seen that. I'll check that out. Sharon's saying, I've got a 14-year-old boy, and I think this would be a really good idea to include feelings and emotions in puberty lessons. To normalize emotions definitely gets my vote. And someone else, I can't see your name, says LinkedIn user. I've had a lot of my male friends call me in order to cry and vent their feelings before. They express that they would never do this to their other male friends, so they feel more comfortable coming to me. How do you think this could be changed so that men and boys can express themselves to each other? Big question. Thank you. I think if you put your name in the next chat as well, so we can see who you are. But I think it starts from young. There's a a lady I had on a previous comment section called Uja Asaika, who spoke around raising boys, and she's got a book called Raising Boys Who Do Better. And she speaks about having a kind of growing up team, which I think is an amazing idea. And I think I kind of had it informally when I was younger. And it's this idea that I think it takes a village. And as parents, sometimes we think we have to be everything to our
So
children.
true. Such a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It's a lot of pressure. I can't be everything to my daughter. I know that. and neither can her mum. We need help. And so the growing up team is where you can surround your son or your daughter with trusted, visible, positive kind of role models, if you like, people who can meet them just a few times a year and take them out for a coffee or to kick a football or to the park or whatever and have a chat. They don't have to say anything overly profound, but just share their experiences and their ideas. And I think when you're a little bit more removed, so it's not your child, you're a bit removed, you can kind of see things a bit clearer. You don't have the parent-child relationship. And that helps so much. And I think for young boys, in regards to like, how do we normalize feelings? I think one thing that we can all do is that we can help to surround our young boys with a growing up team. So uncles, people from your faith group, from work, community, and just ask them to spend some time with your son on a kind of bi-monthly basis, and ask them to talk about the challenges that they're going through in their life, how they process therapy they're going through, how they compromise in their relationships, how they deal with conflict, the importance of men being able to feel everything. I think it's very important that, as adults and as humans, unfortunately, the human experience is mixed, right? Like in my life, I've had some amazing ups, but also some real downs as well. That's not me being a man. That's just me being a human and going through life. And I think it's about talking to men and boys and saying, look, you're just a human being. Ultimately, you're going to go through loss. You're going to go through these ups and downs in life. And to be able to sustain ourselves through it, it's actually essential that we're able to feel it and address it. That is really important. These things are going to happen to us, whether we like it or not. How we deal with it will determine a lot of our life's outcomes. So that's what I would say on that. But I want to kind of move on to the fact that we've talked about reducing stigma. So we talked about boyhood and all the conversation around emotions and talking to boys around that and puberty. We've spoken a little bit about role modeling and storytelling and how that's so important. And we've spoken also about language and framing. And I think a mixture of all these things can help to reduce the stigma. So Esther, when you have a man coming to you for therapy and counseling, how do you adapt your service when working with them? And what do you say and do that might differ based on them being a man and the barriers that they may entail kind of accessing your support?
I think one of the main things is, like I said, the language. I try and avoid using the really feminine language of therapy. And I already kind of find myself going into more of a coaching mode where I'm looking at what men are much more likely to be aware of what their goals are. I find, and want to actually have walk away with some tools, things they can actually do at the end of the session, or and also maybe not be tied into sort of a really long contract or anything. So there's no long contract with me. You can have consultations, you can have one-off consultations. So I might find that younger men, they more like just kind of come for a few sessions of consultation rather than kind of like a year or 6 months of therapy. But also what I really like is that in the same way there was a woman on here saying that, I think it might have been Nikki actually, I'll talk to you about Nikki in a second, that her male friends come to her when they got, a lot on and they're tearful. I find that when I work with men, I'm more often likely to have a friend or relative or the partner in the room. And I really like that. I work a lot more systemically. I think from what the research shows, men are more likely to go to their friends and family than they are a mental health professional. So maybe that's part of it, that they feel kind of safer with the coming with a relative or friend or so on. And often with men, I'm coming more in the context of their role, whether it's a role as a dad or role at work. It's less likely and it's more like a functional reason, you know, like I want to improve my sleep. It's less likely that they'll say, I've been feeling really anxious lately and I need help. It's less likely they'll say that. It'll be, I've had a few days off sick and off work and I want to get back to work, or relationship issues or kind of external factors. And that's also what the research shows, that men are more likely to use that externalizing language rather than the internalizing language of what they might be going through. So that's how I'd adapt my therapy.
So how do you turn that inward then? How do you turn the external to the internal? Share your tricks and secrets,
My tricks.
Esther.
Putting that spotlight on someone, I think that can be quite uncomfortable. But what you're hoping to elicit is, like, through the formulation of what their experience is and what they're describing to you, they'll put themselves in it, and then they'll start opening up about how they feel, and then you'll use their language. So I think in my article I use an example of a man, it could be a woman too, but a man drinking more following a breakup or argument with his partner, and just being able to formulate that. Okay, so the drink, you know, you drink more when you've had a conflict with your girlfriend or whatever it might be, and what's going through your mind at that time. I think she's been unfaithful, whatever it might be. So really breaking down, what are the thoughts, feelings, behavior, what is the formulation, what's happening, where is that coming from, what are the early triggers or like early experiences that have led to those sort of that thought spiral or that thought pattern or those coping behaviors, and really thinking about where those coping behaviors come from and what function they serve. So amazing. I don't know if I just waffled on there.
That's good. No, it's
formulation.
Good. It's really interesting, and I think I'm sure everyone listening it's just really interesting to talk to someone who's doing this work, you know, from a clinical perspective. You're on the ground, you're in the trenches, you're having the conversations, and so I'm fascinated. So no, it's really helpful. It'd be really good to hear like a good news story. So obviously we don't want to hear names because it's confidential. But talk to us about someone that's maybe a man that's come in, that's maybe been not forced in, but maybe came in reluctantly and had problems, had issues, and then has been turned around. What does that journey look like for someone? I think it's really important for us to like talk about the benefits of therapy and counseling, right? And the transformations that it can bring, and the lives that it can save, and the lives that it completely turn around. So talk to us about a good case study that you've had.
So obviously I wouldn't be able to say anything too specific. You've got two men in my promotional video, which is amazing. I'm really, really pleased. And one of them that actually inspired the book that we went on to co-edit on childhood brain injury. And he's a young man now, he's in his 20s. And because I've obviously published about him, it's probably easiest to talk about his outcomes. But I was working with him when he was like 12 years old. Would you want more of an adult example or a child example? Because
whatever you go with what you got. Go with what you got.
So I think in the context of my work, when you say someone comes reluctantly, I've worked more when men are experiencing trauma. As you know, the flashbacks and the nightmares and the panic attacks and the reliving, those symptoms are really, really, really inescapable. They're really hard to get away from. And so even if they're relatively high functioning and they're able to get into work, sometimes something will trigger them. And it could be, so working with someone, for example, many years ago who'd had an accident at work and had fallen off a ladder and broken his leg. And it might just be something as simple as just finding it really, really difficult to confront going back to, I think you mentioned construction work as well. You mentioned that being like a high risk industry, physical labor and construction. And I think really a good outcome would be someone not having those flashbacks and nightmares and panic attacks, being able to go to work, being able to confront going up a ladder again or going up a tall building or whatever it might be, or getting behind the wheel again if they're in a car accident, and being able to put that behind them and process that trauma. And I think those are just any sort of trauma work I've done where there's been an outcome like that has been just immensely rewarding. So I think what I've done, so not to reveal too many personal identifiable information, is kind of amalgamate a few different types of trauma that I might work with. I don't want any of my clients to be thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to be going off talking about me. So there you go. You get a mishmash of car accident, brain injury, falling off ladders.
Right, so let's go to the chat. So I've got Steph from Shropshire. Hi, Steph. So Penny saying creating the right space and environment for people to feel safe to talk is really important. From my experience of working with young men, being alongside them rather than face to face often helps them to feel able to open up, and listening and acknowledging their feelings was important too. Yeah, incredible point, Penny. I think there's a lot of research around male shoulder to shoulder relationships, and they will generally discuss and meet and do stuff shoulder to shoulder. And interestingly, actually, when we do dads hair sessions, so we teach dads how to do hair. We get dolls, clamp them to the table, get dads on the table learning buns and braids and plaits. It's really fun, really a great time. And what you're saying there, Penny, relates, because what we'll do is we'll start them literally shoulder to shoulder. So you're there, you're learning something, shared experience, you're all there for the same reason. Learning, shared experience, a bit, have a bit of jokes, get to know each other a little bit. Great. So we do that for like an hour or so. And then when they have the conversation element, we'll have a bit of a book reading, we'll have breakout groups, group work, and get people to go kind of face to face. And it's so incredible seeing the strangers coming into a room, not knowing each other, being a bit apprehensive. Why am I here? I don't know how to do a plait. Am I going to be laughed at? What am I doing here? And then by the end of it, like face to face with a guy they only met 2 hours ago, but having a really deep conversation. I think for the practitioners, and when it comes to workplace interventions, thinking about that shoulder to shoulder to face element is really important. So yeah, good point, Penny. So Daniel saying in the workplace, I think it's important to intentionally create safe spaces where men can connect, build rapport, and encourage each other to open up and talk. I tested this concept during the pandemic at work and found everyone to be extremely valuable. And everyone found it extremely valuable. We call it the barbershop because in some communities, men find it easier to open up and talk at their barbers about anything. Great. Yeah, great point, Daniel. I think there's so many more organizations now that have they have groups within their gender equality networks, and they're men's groups. So sometimes they're male allyship groups, or they're fatherhood groups and whatnot. And I'm seeing that more and more, which is fantastic. And it's spaces for men to come together and share amongst each other. And I think, in my life, I always say, outside of my family, some of the best moments I've had is when we've got men together to share, and something really amazing can happen there as well. So Richard's saying there's been a lot of negativity in WhatsApp groups that play into stereotypes, but I think they can also be used positively in smaller groups of closer friends. It takes a bit of bravery to be open and honest, but type into a screen can feel less pressure than eyeballing someone. That positivity has now leaked out into non-digital life, where how we're feeling and what we're going through is much more openly discussed with no judgment. Translating it to work, it could be an idea for the leaders of focus group studies. Amazing. Yeah, thanks, Rich, and good to see you again. That's a good point. That kind of the barrier of the screen can be negative, but also when used well, it can be easier as well. So Esther, let's go on to when we kind of were shaping this session. You mentioned that there is actually ways for men to access therapy for free. So we all have a freebie. How does this work?
Yeah, well, okay. So I suppose I'll just talk you through some of the obvious suggestions and then the less obvious ones. So obviously the NHS, we know, it's normally talking therapies, normally an IAPT, increasing access to psychological therapy service. Your GP can make a referral. But your workplace have a responsibility. I know this now because even though I've got a self-employed team, I consider myself an employer. So we've actually got a HR package where everybody's entitled to free counselling. I think it's really, really important that workplaces do onboard an employee assistance program. And most workplaces should, because what they found is that for every £1 that you spend as an employer, you get £5 back in productivity. So this is really, really essential. You'll make money for doing it. So, so talk to your, I know it's hard to have that conversation. Maybe go straight to occupational health if you don't want your manager to know, but they should be able to put you in touch with your employee assistance program. There might even be a free 24-hour helpline, which is what we have as well. Other ways to access free therapy. So a lot of our clients access insurance policies through companies like Bupa or AXA, Aviva, and so on. And most of the time, this is through their workplace, or it could be through a private medical insurance the package that they have, maybe for an other ailment or just generally. And they can access the psychology component of their policy. And what's good about the previous example, the employee assistance program and the private medical insurance, is that it often covers your whole family, so your whole household. So that's really good. So not only can you have sessions, but your child or your partner or your, together you could have sessions with your partner. Other ways of free, I mean, there's lots of charities, incredible charities out there, aren't there? You name it, but there's some really brilliant ones that are kind of dedicated to men's mental health, which you may want to put in the show notes. But you can reach out to some of the charities as well. I came across, when I was doing some research for this talk, an organisation called Peppy, and I think, have you heard of them?
Yeah, I know Peppy.
Yeah, so they sound brilliant. So there's an app, and there's lots of experts you've got access to, and there might be services your employer can buy in. So all of that should be free for the employee. But maybe you can tell me a bit more about how Peppy work.
I think you summed it up pretty well. So shout out to Helen, if Helen's listening. So Helen's the lead for men's health at Peppy, actually, and she joined one of our
fantastic.
She joined one of our sessions called The Lodge. So every month we do online free sessions for dads on Zoom, and they're very informal, but we will normally get a guest speaker to kind of come along and just share their expertise. And Helen came and shared around prostate cancer and testicular cancer, because she's a urologist by trade, and she spoke quite a lot around the fact that with her male clients, often they will be diagnosed very late because they ignore the symptoms of prostate cancer. So they may be passing urine multiple times in the night, feeling unusual pain in their bladder area for months, but they won't talk to anyone about it. They won't take time off work to go to the doctor. And eventually when they do get diagnosed, it's kind of very, very late, and they're rushed into hospital, emergency surgery, etc. And I think there's just knowing that is very powerful, because for me, when we're talking about men's mental health and we're talking about masculinity and ideas of being a man, it's all interlinked, right? The reason why we find it difficult to encourage men to seek help for their mental health and reducing the stigma around that is some of the same reasons as to why we don't go to the doctors for our physical health, and why prostate cancer is the most diagnosed cancer now. It's often diagnosed very, very late. And so it's all, for me, it boils back to that conversation about manhood, what it means to be a man, and allowing ourselves to, yes, be strong, stoic providers at times. That is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But also be provided for, be led, be carers.
I think people are really worried about losing their jobs and taking time off work. And I think as employers, we've got an essential role in just making people aware that their jobs are secure where possible. People shouldn't be too scared to take time off to go to the doctor. This is like essential. The other way that psychologists can help as well is by actually writing reports to occupational health, to your managers, to get workplace adjustments, put in place for you if you needed a phased return to work after a period of illness, or if you needed support from your managers to change your role in any way or accommodate hospital appointments. Because there are laws that are supposed to protect us as employees, aren't there? But really, people shouldn't be scared about having a disability or a health issue or with their protected characteristics. And what I've actually done for my clients as well is write to insurers so that when they are off for a period of sick leave, if it's an extended period of time, it might even be up to a year, that some insurance policies actually pay out for that time while you're sick. I think that's really essential, that people know that it's not the end. It's more important that you put your health first, get the medical treatment you need, get somebody, you know, get a specialist involved, get a psychologist involved to write the report for the workplace assessment, and to kind of, or your medical doctor to kind of explain why you're off sick for a medical condition, and get that insurance to pay out for your wages while you're off sick. And I think people don't have those conversations about what would they do if they were off sick. It's like, I just don't want to think about it. It just can't happen. I can't let myself be sick. I've been there, so I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah, powerful.
People don't want to go to doctor. They're not allowed to go. Their life doesn't permit them to go to doctor.
Definitely. And I think when we're talking about men as well, and the pressure to be the breadwinner and to bring home the bacon, that can be massive. And so taking time out of the workplace, it may be the very real, we can't afford it as a family and we don't know about this, the insurance and the other things that can get us through, or just the perception of, I should be prioritizing work, I should be leaving the house, going to work.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, thanks, Esther. This has been a powerful talk. The time has flown. It's 1:45 already.
It really has. I could talk to you for long. I forgot to ask you if it's recorded. Do you record these?
Yeah, I do record them. Yeah. So it'll be on LinkedIn. So if everyone listening, please share it afterwards. It'll come on LinkedIn, so you'll see it there.
I'm so pleased. I get to enjoy the conversation.
You can enjoy it again. Yeah, we'll do it again definitely. But this has been great, and thank you for everyone at home or at work, wherever you are, for commenting. It's always nice to get loads of comments and participation from the audience. That's what makes the show so special.
Have we got 30 more seconds?
Go on. Last words, go for it.
So LinkedIn News, though, is actually my student on placement with me.
Okay.
She just joined LinkedIn, I think, because she wanted to access this talk.
Okay.
And her name's Nikki Clark, but she's. I wanted to say that it's really important that brilliant, like, social enterprises like yours come alongside university students on placement, because this is how we start sort of germinating those ideas of getting more placements that are suitable for men's mental health on the curriculum at university. Because if you think about it, we, as a clinical psychologist, we're trained in certain settings. We may not always see as many men, and we definitely don't do like community placements. So I think there's food for thought. So other ways to get free or cheaper therapies to see a university student as well.
Great.
Yeah, I've said what I need to say now.
Well, let's talk more about that. We'll definitely talk more. So yeah, thanks to Rich, Daniel, Stephanie. Who else is in the comments? Penny, to Nikki, Sharon, Anima, Rebecca, Gemma, Millie in Scotland, Abby in Bath. Yeah, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been great. We're going to be back next week with Anima, actually talking about male allyship and what that actually looks like. So thank you so much. Thanks, Esther. It's been great.
Great
You can
to see
you. Don't leave the stream. We can have a debrief for a couple of minutes, but I'll
it sounds great.
So hang on. But thanks, everyone. Take care. Have an amazing rest of the week, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. See ya.
Bye.